Chapter 8. Is it always wrong to be angry? Briefly, the answer is no. However, perhaps it is always wrong to be irritable. Why is it not wrong to be angry? Simply because the question of whether anger is wrong or not doesn't really arise. Rather like gravity, anger is part of life, so to start questioning whether it is good or bad is to head up something of a blind alley. This is not the whole story, however. Perhaps we can give a better answer by asking what purpose anger serves. Most of the things that are part of the human condition do serve a purpose, and one suspects that anger is no exception. Anger and disapproval. One purpose is to help to produce socialization in other people. In other words, to encourage other people to behave in the way we would like them to, or more accurately, to discourage other people from behaving in a way we don't want them to. The distinction is not just a question of semantics. It is in fact possible to influence a person's behaviour much more by encouragement than by discouragement. This point was encapsulated by the old cartoon depicting a fearsomely old-fashioned school with a notice on the wall reading, "The beatings will continue until morale improves," neatly making the point that some things simply cannot be produced by beatings or anger or any other negative means. Nevertheless, for our present purposes, it is worth noting that anger does indeed serve as a function of discouraging behaviour that we don't want. The trouble with this is that if we happen to be rather intolerant individuals, then we can feel there is a tremendous lot of behaviour we don't want, which in turn means that we will spend an awful lot of our lives being angry. In this context, the concept of zero tolerance seems to me a disastrous one. For the state to discuss, advocate, and encourage a principle of zero tolerance seems doomed to produce adverse consequences across the board. On the other hand, if we ourselves are fairly tolerant individuals and know what behaviour we like and dislike in each other, then anger can be a highly appropriate response, though of course in moderation. Maybe anger is not really the right word in this context. Possibly annoyance is nearer the mark. If somebody cares for us and cares about what we think, then to see that their behaviour has annoyed us even slightly would be sufficient to influence them. One piece of good news is that there is much less undesirable behaviour than we think. Take the case of Walter and Yvonne, who were out for a day trip to the seaside with their children, aged 10 and 12. It was 12:30 p.m, just coming up to lunchtime, when the family was walking past an ice cream van near the beach. The 10-year-old asked for an ice cream, to which his father replied, "No, it'll be lunchtime in a quarter of an hour." The boy was not to be pacified, however, and persisted in trying to persuade and cajole his father to buy an ice cream, refusing even to move on past the van. His father's response was to insist, "If I say no, I mean no. If you really want one, then you can have one after lunch." This was no good. The 10-year-old wanted his ice cream there and then, and achieving this was evidently becoming more important than life itself. His father, for his part, felt that it was important to make a stand and show his son that you can't always have what you want. Well, I will spare you the ghastly details, but suffice to say that this was the end of their day trip as any sort of enjoyable enterprise. I talked to Walter about this afterwards in terms of the personality characteristics being displayed by the 10-year-old boy. What it boiled down to was that he was being very assertive and very persevering, both of which characteristics his father thought were admirable ones he'd want in his son when he became an adult. So paradoxically, he felt he should be encouraging such characteristics rather than just getting angry when they are displayed. This is only one small example of how tricky it can be to judge and appraise situations. Much more often than it seems at first sight, the characteristics that are being displayed when we attempt to get annoyed are ones which in other circumstances we would actually value rather than condemn. What it boils down to is that anger, or at least annoyance, can be entirely appropriate to express disapproval of other people's behaviour when we really are sure that we disapprove of it. Anger and motivation. Anger/annoyance also has another purpose, namely to provide us with the motivation to do things we otherwise wouldn't do. One of the angriest times I've ever experienced was when our 9-month-old daughter got locked in the car on a very hot summer's day with the keys also in the car. Nearby was a man from the emergency rescue service who wouldn't help us in spite of our being members. It was the middle of June. Amelia was in her buggy on the back seat of the car, and my wife had inadvertently locked the keys in the car. Distraught, she left Amelia and the car and went out onto the street with our other daughter, who was 2, to seek help. She spotted a man wearing the uniform of the rescue service just 50 yards down the street. She explained her plight, to which the man replied, "Are you a member?" Patricia said yes, she was, to which the reply was, "Have you got your membership card?" Patricia said, "Yes, it's in the car." And the man's response was, "Well, I can't do anything without your membership card." However, in a fit of generosity, he loaned her a coin to phone me up so that I could come with the spare keys. I got there as quickly as I could, gave Patricia the spare keys and went to speak to the rescue man. I say to speak to, but that is perhaps misrepresenting what followed. I gave him a full and thorough account of what I thought of him and his family, lasting a good 5 minutes, and much to the entertainment of passers-by. Now, if you had asked me one sunny June afternoon to go and advise a representative of a road rescue service on how he should behave if somebody has locked themselves out of and their baby into a car, I would probably have said that I had better things to do. It was only the absolute rage I felt that fired me up to enthusiastically advise this particular man. The same thing applies when we hear stories of people going to help strangers beaten up in the street, or countries declaring war on other countries that are trampling over the human rights of their neighbours. How much anger is enough? So the interesting question arises as to how much anger we need to display in order to influence other people's behaviour. Clearly there is a vast range available. As we said earlier, if a person cares about you and what you think, then your expression of the slightest hint of annoyance will probably be sufficient. In fact, different rules hold good for physically violent situations such as war. So for the moment, let us confine ourselves to non-violent interpersonal situations. With anger, as with most other things, it is not a question of the more the better if you want to be effective. The inverted U-curve, sometimes known as Aristotle's golden mean, holds good here. If you like graphs, this is the thing for you. It is normally drawn as shown in Fig 8.1 on page 59. It suggests that a little bit of anger will have some effect. A bit more anger will have more effect. But if you increase the anger too much, then the effect comes down again. And at Fig 8.1, it is called the traditional inverted U-curve. Actually, this traditional inverted U is not quite what is needed in the case of anger. More accurate is the version shown in Fig 8.2. on page 60, which is the graph showing effective anger. What this shows is that the best amount of anger is just a small amount. If you increase it, the effectiveness decreases, and if you increase it even more, then the effectiveness is negative. In other words, what you are doing is counterproductive, and far from influencing your target in the required direction, will provoke them to dig their heels in or react against you, or however you like to describe it. If you don't like graphs, forget this and think about someone who's not very good at making a cup of coffee. For the sake of argument, let's agree that the best amount of coffee to put in a mug is 1 rounded teaspoonful. So Andy comes along, puts 2 rounded teaspoons in his mug, adds boiling water and milk, sits down to enjoy it and finds it doesn't taste very nice. Of course, he doesn't know why it doesn't taste very nice, because he's no good at making coffee. So what does he do? He goes and puts in a 3rd teaspoonful, which of course makes it taste even worse, and if he's really hopeless, he may even go back and add a 4th. Now the coffee example seems ridiculous to most of us, because we know how much coffee to put in a mug. Not to Andy though, because he's never made his own coffee before, and he has no idea how to do it. This is an exact parallel with some people and their anger. They start off by displaying much too much anger, and find that they don't get the desired result. So what do they do then? Get even angrier still. To an onlooker this is a bizarre, and as bizarre as Andy putting even more coffee in his mug when he already has too much. To the person concerned, however, it doesn't seem like that. If that much anger didn't work, then perhaps twice as much will, they seem to be saying. In summary, anger, like pepper, is best in very small amounts, if at all. Does irritability have a purpose? What about irritability? Does the same argument hold good there? The answer seems to be no, because the essence of irritability is that it is unjustified and inappropriate, more a reflection of your mood than of anything anybody else has done. I've heard it said that the advantage of being known as irritable is that it keeps everybody else on their toes. The implication is that you will always be treated as carefully as though you were at your most irritable, because even when you are in a good mood, people put it down to the fact that they are handling you with kid gloves. So they carry on treating you that way. For most people, this is only a superficial attraction. Most people want to be respected and liked at work and in social situations, and liked and loved at home. While irritability may force others to cover up the manifestations of their disrespect and dislike for you, it does no more than that. There seems no shortcut to acquiring respect, liking and love, short of earning it. Being irritable normally means starting off with an overdraft.